Before we actually get started, I want to make sure that this is the best webinar for your needs. So if you would review the questions listed, does your organization have an EIN number? Have you filed with the Secretary of State's office? Do you know what type of organization you have? Is it a for-profit, a not-for-profit, or something else? Does your organization have tax-exempt status? Now, just because you have an EIN number doesn't mean you are tax-exempt. Even if you do not have tax-exempt status, you may need to register with us. Even if your organization doesn't have tax-exempt status, you may still have a charitable purpose. So that's not a qualifier, whether or not you are tax exempt, whether you need to file or not. These and many other questions are going to be addressed in this webinar, and they're addressed on our website. So if you know the answers to the questions above, then you're ready to proceed. You're participating in the webinar titled Ohio's Charitable Registration and Filing Requirements. This webinar is going to cover a lot of information in a short amount of time. The primary focus of the webinar is to assist you with the registration and filing of the annual reports so that your organization can get and remain compliant. This presentation will address your questions about registration and filing annually with the Ohio Attorney General's Charitable Law section. We're going to talk about why an organization needs to register by giving a brief outline of the two laws requiring registration and filing. We will then discuss who needs to register, and we will explain what is meant by an Ohio organization. We're going to show you where to register and also how someone can monitor your organization's filing through our registration, through our research charity feature. Both of these are on our website, so we'll briefly show you how to navigate our website. We're going to talk about the due dates for when your registration is to be completed and when your annual reports are due. I know that sounds like a lot, but then we're going to spend the majority of the remaining time reviewing the process of how to get and stay compliant in 3 easy steps. Why you need to register. Most states have some charitable registration requirements, and Ohio is no different. The biggest reason for registering with Ohio Attorney General's Charitable Law section is that it's the law. There are 2 primary statutes that instruct who is to register and file annually with our office. The first one is Ohio Revised Code 109, the Ohio Charitable Trust Act. If your organization is an Ohio Charitable Trust, then you are required to register to file under this statute. The other statute, Ohio Revised Code 171601, the Ohio Charitable Organization Solicitation Act, addresses organizations that are soliciting for a charitable purpose in Ohio. So this could include out-of-state organizations if they're soliciting Ohioans. Ohio Revised Code 1716.01 Section K addresses what is considered as solicitation. It is important to stay current with your filings. A lot of organizations will fall under both of these statutes. But if registered and current under 109, these organizations may not be assessed fees under 1716.01. There are many additional reasons for registering. The primary job of the Ohio Attorney General's Charitable Law section is to protect Ohioans and charitable assets. So registration and annual filings are the basis for all we do. Registration provides transparency to the public so that fraud can either be prevented or identified and stopped. Registration helps to protect reputations. We work to prevent fraudulent charities from defrauding Ohioans, and in particular our seniors. We also provide a way for the public to make complaints through our website. We know that you work hard to pursue your organization's mission, and our job is to protect that stated mission and Ohioans by making sure that charitable assets are used for their intended purpose. So, just to quickly recap what the law says. Under Ohio Revised Code 109, the term charitable trust is broadly defined. If your organization is holding funds for a charitable purpose, then it's considered a charitable trust, regardless of whether it has tax-exempt status or not. If your organization is a 501c3, then it's considered a charitable trust. When we say an Ohio organization, we are talking about charitable trusts that are either located in Ohio, organized or formed in Ohio, have programming in Ohio, or those that have assets in Ohio. If you meet any of these conditions, then your organization is considered an Ohio organization. If you meet none of these, then you will want to contact our office for an out-of-state form, unless you're soliciting. Organizations that are soliciting for a charitable purpose in Ohio are required to file under Ohio Revised Code 1716. This includes Ohio organizations, but could include out-of-state organizations if they are soliciting Ohioans. Section K of Ohio Revised Code 1716 addresses what is considered solicitation, and you can find a link to both of the statutes on our website. You will complete registration and filing online through the Charitable Ohio website. The Ohio Attorney General's office has a special website just for all of us. This is a standalone website for Ohio charities. You can get to Charitable Ohio website from the Ohio Attorney General's website, but you don't need to. The web address is charitable.ohioago.gov. We have expanded information that is pertinent to charities, and it's organized to be user-friendly. If you have been filing for years, don't worry, the filing screens look exactly the same. The only difference is how you get there. If you get to the website, you have several options. If you do not have a user account, you can still check the status of an organization through our Research Charities page. Research Charities is one of the options on the gray Charitable Ohio bar across the top of the page. This feature is a special feature is available to everyone. An account is not required to check the status of an organization. To research an organization, you will type in either the organization's name or EIN, and by clicking on the details, you will be able to view the information provided by the organization. You will also be able to see if the organization is compliant. This page will not show what is needed for compliance. To find that out, you will need to log into your user account, and we'll show you how to do that in just a little later. You can also print this page by scrolling to the bottom of the organization information. This printout is often used as part of a grant application process to determine if an organization has met the registration requirements. Charities will also be able to direct potential donors to the Charitable Ohio web page to confirm the organization's compliance with the registration requirements. And this page also gives other research suggestions. So at the bottom of the page, it's going to give you other links to like the Better Business Bureau and maybe GuideStar and some of those other useful tools if you're looking at other organizations. So when do you need to do these things? The user account is to be created so the user can be linked to the specific organization. An account must be created to either register or file annually, or just to monitor the organization's activity. You may also need to create a new user account whenever an email address changes or the user changes. Registration is to be completed only one time. This is to be done within 6 months of the formation of the organization and must be done before any solicitation occurs. The annual reports and fees are to be submitted online each year. The due date is based on the year end of the organization. If you file a 990 online with the IRS, the 990 and our annual report are due at the same time. We encourage you to complete the 990 first, as it may contain the information needed to file the annual reports with our office. And finally, you are to provide the required documents initially during registration, but also if you are requesting an exemption determination, you're going to provide documents to support your claim. And whenever you update those documents, if you have new bylaws, then you'll want to provide us with copies of the updated documents whenever changes are made to your creating or governing documents. We're going to break down the how section into 3 easy steps. We'll first show you how to create a user account. Then we'll explain how to complete registration if you're required to complete registration. And third step, we're going to show you how to file the annual report. We'll also address how to pay any fees or late fees associated with filing the annual report. So as you're navigating through the system, you may encounter a couple symbols that I want to comment on. To the left of many of the questions, you may see a red asterisk. It's very small. This indicates that questions are required and this field is required and must be answered. There will be some questions that do not apply to your organization and are not required to be answered. So those are not marked with the red asterisk. To the right of many of the questions, you will see a gold question mark. We call this a tooltip. For additional information or clarification on a question, you can click on that gold question mark and a window will open with additional information about that particular question. These are especially helpful when completing the annual report. For many of the annual report questions, the gold question mark will tell you on what line of the 990 to find the answer. So if you file a 990 or a 990 EZ or even a 990 PF, then it's going to tell you maybe what line you can find that information. It's not as helpful for the 990Ns because they don't require any information. At the bottom of many pages, you'll see arrows pointing either back or next. By clicking either back or next at the bottom of the page, your information is going to be stored up to that point. So if you would need to stop before completing it, maybe you got called away to pick up your kids or you had to run out and do an errand, you'll be able to log back in later and pick up where you left off. So if you hit next or back, it's going to save your information up to that point. You cannot print the information until it has been submitted. Until you submit the information, you're able to change it. Once the information has been submitted, an email of the information that was submitted is sent to all active user accounts, and you can simply print the email. This email will also say who submitted the information along with the date and time the information was submitted. So again, as you're going along the system, maybe you're completing registration. We've had a lot of people call in and say they want to print those pages. Well, you can do screenshots of them, but you cannot print them because they can still be changed. So once you've filed your information, then an email is going to be sent to you with all the information that you provided. It's also going to be provided to everyone that has an account. Now to the main point of the training, to get and stay compliant. This doesn't have to be difficult. There are 3 very manageable steps. First, you're going to create a user account. Second, if it's required, you will complete the registration. And third or lastly, you will file any required annual reports and pay any required fees. Simple enough? Okay, let's move on. Step 1 is setting up your user account. Getting to the correct website is the first obstacle to overcome. Just to review, the website is charitable.ohioago.gov. So you could continue typing /charitable-registration and go directly to the registration page, or you can select the charity registration tab. You'll select the register a charity, file reports, or create an account page. And you can do this. You have two options. You can either do the drop down and select it, or you can select the first picture, and that's going to take you to the login page. The login page has been broken into two sections. If you're a returning user and you've already created your account, you're going to log in at the top with your email and the password that you made up. If this is your first time, then you're going to log in where it says first time users. You're going to provide your email address. This should be your information. You really can't register an account for someone else because you have to confirm it. The email needs to be one that you have access to and one that you regularly check. We will be sending an email to verify the email address, and we're occasionally going to send you notices of what's due. If things are still needed, we're going to send you emails. We do not spam you, but we are going to send you information. You also, if you are checking your email account, you may get notices that someone else submitted something if other people have user accounts. So you want to make sure that it's an account that you regularly check. You will be asked to enter a password that you make up, and you'll be asked to verify it by typing it a second time. You will then type in your first and last name, a phone number where you can be reached, and your relationship to the organization. Once this is finished, you can select Create. Multiple people associated with an organization can have an account. So the CPA, the treasurer, the secretary, etc. Each person will have their own account. So it's going to be their email and their password. When a person is no longer associated with the organization, their account can be deactivated by sending an email to charitable registration at ohioattorneygeneral.gov. You're going to include the name of the organization, the EIN, and the email address that you're asking to be deactivated. When you're setting up your user account, you'll be asked to enter the EIN number of the organization that you're wishing to be linked to. What's going to happen is the system's going to look through our database looking to find if that organization is in our system. If it finds the organization, then it's going to populate that organization's information, and it's going to ask if this is the organization you wish to be linked to. If it doesn't find your organization, then the system's going to ask you to provide some basic demographic information about your organization. So this is to put the organization in our system. It's sort of a placeholder, but just so you know, this is not the registration. Once you have entered the information and reviewed it, I don't recommend making any changes at this time. Like if you were to log in and it finds your organization, but it has the old treasurer's address, I'm not going to recommend you make any changes at this time. You'll be permitted to make changes later to that demographic information if it's needed once you've created your account. Providing you've done everything correctly, you'll be asked to confirm your email address. To do this, you'll need to go to your email account and locate the email from charitable registration. So once we're going to send you an email to have you confirm that this account. Again, it's important that you use an email address that you have access to when you create the user account. This confirmation email will be sent right away. So once you've hit submit, a few minutes later, you should get the email. The email will look very much like the one shown. Once you open the email, you'll be asked to click the link inside to confirm your account. Once you've clicked on the link, the page will open to let you log in. You will no longer be a first-time user. You should have received the email right away. If you don't receive the email within 5 minutes, you will need to check a few things. You can try refreshing your email folder by selecting Send and Receive. You can check your spam filter. You may need to contact your IT department to make sure that a firewall didn't block it, or you may have add us to your safe sender list. So again, if you don't receive the email in 5 minutes, you'll want to check these things. So try refreshing your folders. The email should come from charitable registration at ohioattorneygeneral.gov. So you may need to contact your IT department. Make sure you're using the same device to do all the steps. We've had some times where people start to do the registration on the computer and then they want to confirm it on their phone. And while that could work, there have been times when it's caused some confusion. So if you're going to be, see if you can do it all from one device. That's what I would recommend, because that way you may eliminate some issues. If you've checked all of these possible issues and you still did not receive the email, you should contact our office. A feature of this system, a feature is that a user can be associated with more than one organization. This is especially helpful for maybe CPAs or attorneys that have several clients, or maybe even the principal of a school. Maybe you have several organizations within your school that you just want to keep track of. Maybe you are just active in your community, you're treasurer for one group and president of another group. You can use one email address and the same password to access both or many organizations. So this is something that a lot of people don't realize about the system. You'll do this by signing into the first organization. You'll pick one of your organizations. You'll create your user account for that. And then so you'll sign into that organization. And then over under menu, you'll select Add Organization. You will be asked to add the EIN of the second organization that you want to add or that you want to be a part of. Once you verify that this is the organization you also want to be connected to, you will submit the information. Once you have been connected to multiple organizations, you will see them as a list when you sign in. They're going to be listed, and you'll just select the one that you want to work in. There is a change organization feature that will allow you to move from organization to organization. It's also located under the menu on the left-hand side. This will allow you to move from one organization to another organization without having to log out and log back in. Assuming you received your confirmation email and were able to click on the link, when you sign in, you will see the to-do list. It should say, welcome, whatever your name is. You are logged in for your charity. You have completed the first step, so there's only 2 more to do. It is important that you pay attention to what appears on this to-do list, as it will provide the detail of what is outstanding. In the example, the user needs to complete registration and can do so by clicking on the registration link shown below in blue. Now, occasionally it may look gray, but you can still click on it. Moving on to step 2, registration. If you aren't found to be exempt, then you're going to need to register. We'll talk about specialized exemptions toward the end of the presentation. Organizations must register and file online from the to-do list. You will know if registration is required because it will be listed as one of the tasks to be completed. If you received a message that nothing is required at this time, then you may want to contact our office to verify that this is correct. Let's quickly review how to get to the to-do list. So from your browser, you're going to type in your web address, charitable.ohioago, or better yet, save the information as a favorite or a bookmark. From the charity registration tab, then you're either going to select the option from the drop-down menu, or you're going to select the picture that says file a report, create an account, or register a charity. So that's going to take you to the login page, and then you'll be ready to log in. You can go ahead and put in your email and your password, and that should take you to the to-do list. From the to-do list, you may see registration. You may see other items that are due. If you do not see registration, then it's very likely that someone else has already completed registration for your organization. Many of you will be, you're not the first treasurer. Your organizations have been in operation for a while. You're picking up the pieces and you're going to be logging in. Now, if you do see registration, that means it still needs to be completed. So it's important to pay attention to what you see on the to-do list. To complete the registration, you'll click on registration and proceed to answer the questions. Now, there's a lot of times when people start the registration, but they don't finish it. Registration has been broken down into 4 steps. Step 1 is the demographic information. Step 2 is regarding the organization's structure. Step 3 is about your purpose and your asset information. Just a reminder, you're only required to answer those questions that have a red asterisk, so some of the questions will not pertain to your organizations. You're going to be asked for the organization's year end. Organizations must define a 12-month period that will be used as the basis for reporting financial information. You will likely have already done this. Groups can select a calendar year that begins January 1st and ends December 31st, which seems to be the most popular choice. However, organizations may find it more convenient to select some other dates that define their fiscal year. July 1 to June 30th is the second most common fiscal period. The response to this question should indicate the last month of the fiscal year. For instance, if you're on a calendar year, you're going to answer December. If you have been granted tax exempt status, the year end will appear on your federal tax exemption determination letter that you received from the IRS. Dates are all in the format day, month, year, 2 digits / 2 digits / 4 digits for the year. Step 4 of registration is where you're going to be asked to provide the documents. So we're going to be asking for 2 documents in 2 different categories. The first category is creating or governing documents, and this could be your articles of incorporation. So if you've filed with the Secretary of State's office, they should be the same thing, your articles of incorporation, or bylaws, or a constitution, or a trust agreement. The second type of document will verify your organization's tax exempt status. So if your organization has been granted tax exempt status, then you're going to provide the federal tax exemption determination letter. And I'm going to repeat this. If your organization currently has tax exempt status, then we will need a copy of your federal tax exemption determination letter. This is the letter that was issued by the IRS granting your organization tax exempt status. So this is not the letter that assigned an EIN number. If your organization doesn't have tax exempt status. Well, let's back up. If your organization, if you don't know if your organization has tax exempt status or not, you can check with the IRS. They have a website that you can go and check to see if, it'll give you a listing of who has tax exempt status. Tax exempt status, to be granted, you have to provide an application, and then there's a fee that you provide to the IRS. So if you have it, you probably know, but again, you may be someone that's coming in after the organization has already been operating for a while. So you can check with the IRS. If your organization doesn't have tax exempt status, then you'll need to complete the affirmation of IRS status form. That's the other form that I was explaining. This affirmation of IRS status form is available on our website under forms at the bottom of the charitable page. If your organization doesn't have tax exempt status, and this could be because you've applied and you haven't received your notice from the IRS yet back, then you'll complete this form. So there's 3 options on this form. The first option is that you're going to, all 3 options are for organizations that do not have tax exempt status. First option is for organizations that say, we are not going to apply. We know we don't have it and we're not going to apply. Second option is for organizations that are self-declaring. And the third option is that we have applied to the IRS, and then you're going to be asked to put the date that you applied, but we just haven't heard from the IRS yet. So if you have applied and you haven't heard, you'll put the date that you applied, make sure you sign that form, and then it'll be uploaded in place of your tax exemption determination letter. If at some point in the future you get that tax exempt status, then you can provide that letter from the IRS. So if you need to find out about tax exempt status, the IRS website is www.irs.gov. If you are unable to upload the documents, when you get to this point, we're going to ask that you scroll past the list of possible documents, and you're going to scroll on down to where it says or. There's a big or, and right below is a little box that says you can either mail, I think it says either mail or fax in the documents later. It should also say upload or email. Those are also valid options for getting the documents to us. But if you can't upload the documents when you get to this point, please scroll past that, mark that you will mail them in or get them to us later. And then that way you can go ahead and submit this information. So if you're unable to upload the documents when you get to this point, you will want to scroll down past the list of possible documents and mark that you will be providing the documents later, either by mailing or faxing, or you could email them. The task to provide the registration documents will remain on your to-do list until they've been added to your files. So either you'll be the one uploading them or we will upload them. You will review and submit the information, and then you'll go back to your to-do list. Remember, if you mark that you would be sending in the documents later, that you'll need to get the required documents to our office so the registration can be completed. You can email the documents as well, and our staff will upload them to your organization's file. Once you have reviewed the information, do not forget to hit submit at the bottom of the page. Once you have entered submit, you'll be ready to move on to the final step. So if you were not able to upload the documents or you mailed them in, the flag asking for the documents will remain on your to-do list. This will stay on your to-do list until these documents have been added to your file, either by you or by our staff. The registration will not be considered as complete until the documents have been provided. So the organization may be considered out of compliance until these registration documents have been provided and the registration is totally completed. Even if the provide even if the provide registration documents remains on your to-do list, you can still move on to step number 3. And so step number 3 is filing the annual report and paying the fees. So you'll, from the to-do list, you will be able to see if there are any annual reports that need to be filed. If file annual report, you'll see it's in gray there, shows up on your to-do list, then that means that an annual report is ready to be filed. So if you see that annual report, you'll want to click on that to see if more than the current year is being requested. The annual report activity will only show up once the registration questions have been submitted. So it could still say that the documents are due, but if you haven't submitted your registration, you're only going to see registration. So you need to make sure you submit registration, and then you'll see the annual report activity show up if there are annual reports that need to be submitted. It is possible that more than one annual report may be required. Once you have clicked on File Annual Report, the first item will ask that you select a year. And this is very important. So if more than 1 year appears, you will need to complete all of those years listed. These annual reports are based on the formation date of the organization. So it could ask not only for the current year, but it could ask for previous years if the organization has been around a while. And if someone, it's possible that it could be many years, but it's usually only the 2 previous years if you're just doing the registration for the first time. The current annual report will appear as a task to be completed as soon as the year is over. So it's possible that for a new organization, there may not be an annual report currently due. For example, if your organization was formed in March of this year, or February, we'll say February of this year, and you have a December year end, there would be no annual report currently due as your first year has not yet been concluded. The annual report for December year end organization would appear on the to-do list around January 1st. So as soon as the year end is over, it's going to show up on your to-do list. So even if you were formed the end of last year, you may have annual reports that are due. So you will want to file the annual reports in chronological order, starting with the oldest. The annual report must be filed online. Please do not send paper forms, as we do not need a copy of your 990. You will simply answer the questions that are asked online. If you file a 990 series return with the IRS, please note that their due date and our due date, again, I want to reiterate this, are for the same time period. We encourage you to file your 990 with the IRS first, and then you can file your annual report with us. If you have been granted an IRS extension, we will honor that extended date. If you do not file by the initial due date, we are going to assume that you have received an extension with the IRS, and we will not consider your filing late as long as your report has been filed and any related fees have been paid before the extended deadline has passed. So it is important that you're filing for the correct year. When looking at the IRS 990 return, we go by the year-end date on the second line. If you look at this example, it says it's the 2017 form. But if you take a closer look at the second line, you will see that the year-end is January of 2018. So we are going to call this 2018. According to our system, this is the annual report for 2018 because the year ended in 2018. If your year end was June 30th, 2018, it would still be the annual report for 2018 because the year end is 2018. For a calendar year, this is easy because if your year ends in 2018, December of 2018, it's still going to be 2018. So I hope that makes sense. The oldest report should be filed first and any fees paid. Otherwise, you'll be considered out of compliance when you're filing the next year. Not only may you be subject to late fees, but you could also find that one of the exemptions for 1716 may no longer be recognized, in which case you would be subject to both statutes and both fees and a late fee. If you file on time annually and pay the fees timely, there should not be an issue with staying compliant. When you are answering the questions on the annual report, you will want to look at the tooltips for each question by clicking on the gold question mark off to the right of each question. In some cases, in many cases, it will tell you what line on the 990, 990 EZ, or 990 PF you can find the figure that's being requested. Every charitable organization that files is asked to the same 4 questions. So everyone is asked the same initial 4 questions. It's very important that these 4 questions are answered correctly. The answers provided to these questions will determine if additional questions will be required. For many organizations, these first 4 questions will be all that are required. If you want to see a list of all the possible questions, the list of annual report questions is available on our website, but I want to caution you when looking at them that for most smaller organizations are only going to be asked the first 4 questions. So don't get yourself, anxious. Some people get anxious when they see all those questions, but the majority of the smaller organizations are only going to be asked the first 4 questions. So the first questions: did your organization on its own behalf solicit Ohioans? So this question confuses people because it mentions bingo. If your organization has a bingo license, then you are soliciting, because bingo is a form of soliciting. Bingo is not the only form of solicitation we're asking about. And we're not just asking, did your organization go door to door? So, did your organization solicit for charitable contributions? Did you have bake sales, flower sales, brick sales, fish fries, any kind of fundraising? How do you get money for your organization's operation? If you have any question about whether your organization is soliciting, please refer to Section K of Ohio Revised Code 1716, which outlines what is considered solicitation. It is surprising how many times PTOs or booster organizations will incorrectly mark that they don't solicit. And this is usually a red flag to us, because raising money, while it may be correct, raising money is usually the primary purpose of many of these organizations. So again, if you have any questions, please refer to Section K of Ohio Revised Code 1716-01. Question 2, did your organization hire a professional solicitor? That's just a yes or no question. Question 3, what was the organization's gross revenue? So what did the organization take in during the year? And then the last question, what was the organization's total assets? These are remaining at the end of the year. So did the organization have anything of value remaining? So assets would include bank account balances, property, buildings, vehicles, investment accounts, cash on hand, equipment, etc. We understand that mistakes happen, but if you make a mistake and your answers or figures need to be corrected, you're going to need to email us what the mistake was, along with the organization's name and EIN. Once we receive this email, our staff will work to make the needed corrections. So you're going to need to know your gross revenue and your total assets. And these are the total assets remain at the end of the year. And those may be the only 4 questions that some people are asked. So, question 2, did your organization hire a professional solicitor? Do you have a contract with someone that solicits for the organization? Again, question 3, what is gross revenue? So this is a dollar amount. But you don't need to put the dollar sign in because it'll put it in for you. What did your organization take in during this year? And then that last question, what was your total assets that remained? For many organizations, once the first 4 questions have been submitted, they will be done with annual Attorney General charitable laws offices filing obligations, and no fee will be assessed. For those that are required to answer more questions, the system will ask about revenue, assets, liabilities, and expenses. One of the questions that we're often asked is, what are program service expenses? So these are unique to each organization because they're based on the organization's stated mission or stated purpose. Program expenses are broadly defined as any activity that fulfills an organization's exempt purpose as determined by the organization's mission statement. The organization's mission statement and or purpose must be listed in their governing documents. For example, a food pantry would claim the cost of food purchased to provide to its clients, while an educational institution might report the cost of textbooks, computers, or teachers used to train students. Again, if you get started filing an annual report and you have to stop, be sure to hit next or back at the bottom of the page so you can save your information up to that point. For the most part, the thing that will take the longest when filing the annual report is where we ask for the board members to be added. And yes, you will need to enter them all. The good news is that this information will be saved from year to year. So if you have provided the information last year, you'll only need to edit those that need changed by adding those or by adding those that are new or removing those that are no longer appropriate to include. So, but that often does take a little bit of time. Once you've answered all the questions, you'll be given a chance to review the information. Before you've submitted the information, you are able to make changes. But once you have submitted it, hit submit, it has been submitted and you cannot make changes or corrections without contacting our office. In the event that you have an error, and you've discovered that you've made a mistake, you will need to contact our office by emailing the change that is needed. You're going to mail that to charitable registration at ohioattorneygeneral.gov. And I'll put that on. It'll be up later. Once you have submitted the annual report, you, as well as all of the users linked to your organization, will be sent an email of what was submitted. It's going to say who submitted it, and it's going to say when it was submitted. And so you will then need to check the to-do list to see if any fees are required. If there is a fee due, the system will automatically calculate the amount due based on the information that you provided. For organizations that file under Charitable Trust Act, Ohio Revised Code 109, fees are based on the amount of total assets the organization has at the end of the year. For organizations that file under Charitable Organization Solicitation Act, Ohio Revised Code 1716, fees are based on the total amount of contributions received from Ohioans throughout the year. In some cases, organizations will be assessed fees under both statutes. But you may be happy to hear that for most organizations, as long as they remain compliant under the Charitable Trust Act, they will not need to pay fees under the Charitable Organization Solicitation Act. because there's a specialized exemptions if they meet the criteria. It is important to stay in compliance, file and pay fees on time. Late fees are $200 for each occurrence. If a late fee is assessed, it will only be charged under one of the statutes, but it's possible that if your organization were to fall out of compliance, it could be assessed fees under both statutes and a late fee. The maximum fee could be as much as $600 for 1 year. That's why it's important to stay compliant. The fees are automatically assessed by the system. You will be shown how much is due and asked to choose your payment method. You will be asked to pay online with either a credit card, either MasterCard or Visa, or by an e-check. And that's where you put in the bank routing number and the fee is electronically transferred. Mailing a check is no longer an option. Not all organizations are required to register and file with the Ohio Attorney General's Charitable Law section, as there are some specialized exemptions that some organizations will qualify for. These exemptions are not automatic and must be requested. I'm going to say that again. These exemptions are not automatic and must be requested. There are certain exemptions written into the statutes. The most common exemptions are for religious entities and educational institutions. To determine if the organization would qualify for an exemption, you will need to create an account, which you already know how to do from step 1. Once you have logged into the to-do list, you will select Request Exemption which is one of the menus on the left-hand side of the page. Under menu, you're going to request exemption under menu. You can review the criteria to see if any of the exemptions apply to your organization. If so, you may want to request an exemption. Please select all that apply to your organization, and then you will be asked to provide documentation to support your claim. So it's important that you look at all of those because there are actually 2 different statutes. So we want to make sure that while we're reviewing them, we look at both options. Upload the requested supporting documents. The system asks for them to be provided within 30 days of the request. Provide an email or cover letter explaining how or why your organization meets the criteria to be exempted. Describe the group's activity, the relationship that relate to the exemption category. If documents were not uploaded to the system, they can be attached to this cover letter or email. Your request will then be reviewed by an attorney in our office and a decision will be emailed. Please note that certain entities can be exempted under one statute, but not the other, in which case they are still required to file. Once a decision has been made, be sure to read your decision notice carefully. We have provided some additional resources on this slide. They are also available on the website. These are also listed on the handout. In the handout section. The back issues of the newsletter we produce are available, as well as links to the brochures that our office produces. You can either print them out or contact our office for hard copies to be mailed to your organization. You will also see that the links to the websites have been provided. Thank you for your participation this afternoon. We hope you found this presentation informative. If you have questions or concerns and cannot, if you have questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact our office for additional questions.